Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, FromTheShadowsPodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/FromTheShadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
So, Howler, last week you promised,
that
you had a horse eaten, and look, I don't know that we should be talking about eating horse because, like we mentioned before, my stepdaughter shows horses. I'm part owner in a harness racing horse. I mean, I really like horses. I don't know that I'd ever eat a horse though. I just can't fathom it. So I'm interested in, plus how did they ever come up with I'm hungry enough to eat a horse? Is that because it's so offensive to eat a horse or
I don't think it is. I mean, I think the modern man post World War II made it. What do they call it? They have a name for it. What's it called in France? Like it's not beef, it's something else.
I don't know what
it's
you're the world traveler. You're the one
food connoisseur. Yes. Well, I don't. You know what I'm doing? I'm multitasking. Horsemeat or Chevaline, Chevaline, as its supporters have rebranded it. But it's darker and coarser than beef, grain, yellow, fat. Trouble history of horse meat in America. I don't know. I don't know. It says right here, U.S. horse meat is unfit for human consumption because of the uncontrolled administration of hundreds of dangerous drugs and other substances to horses before slaughter. These drugs are labeled not for use in animals, used for food. Anyway, not to get too tangent on too down there, but I've been around killer horses the biggest part of my life back when it was legal. Okay, you know what I'm talking about when I say killer horses?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've talked about that before.
We've
off
talked
the
about
air.
that. Yes.
Yeah,
killer
off the air. Yeah.
So I know right now you can go to Mandan, North Dakota. They have a big horse sale a couple times, and it's on the menu because you get up north, Canada, not to get too, as I understand it, slaughtering horses when Speaker Pelosi first came to power under President Obama. That's when they made. When they controlled both the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they made killing horses illegally, for consumption. So, but now they bring them by the trainload up to Canada. The Canadian horses either get 8 in Canada or they get 8 in Europe, and the horses that go to Mexico, they bring them by the huge trains every day, and they slaughter. They're going to the Chinese. Okay. and I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but when I was going to retire, I looked at being an insurance adjuster, and I went on a training claim out to that's what it's called, a training claim. And this guy had a commercial farm and ranch policy, and he had a fire in his house. Older gentleman, he's 80 some years old, and just prince of a guy. But now you've been around dudes that are in great shape, right? You can tell a guy that's been in great shape. If you've been around and
absolutely, yep.
and if you've been around an 80-year-old guy that you look at and go, this guy's tough. I mean, he's still jacked at 80 years old, or as close to jacked as you could get. Let me tell you how jacked he is. His house caught on fire, and he's in Wisconsin, sub-zero weather in February. Okay. And he's 82, I think, 81 or 82 when this happened. You know, he left me a voicemail not too long ago. I might call him this week just to check on him. But he jumped out of the second story window into about 28 inches of snow. Okay. Because when he walked out his bedroom door, the fire started at a wood stove in the basement and had burnt it had gotten through the wall. It was like a flue fire that caught the wall on fire. So and when fires get oxygen to the outside, if the fire's in the house, especially up north there, it burns the oxygen out of the house and it really kind of smothers, it's like having a lid on a pot or something. But if they get an outside oxygen source like this, burn a hole in the wall, so it's sucking that air in it, so it really gets to burning. So when he walked out of his bedroom door, it was burning in the floor. You know what I mean? So and the house was full of smoke. He opened his bedroom door and he was afraid the floor, he didn't know where to walk. So he chose to jump out the second story window into, 28, 30 inches of snow, walk around the house. Now he's barefoot. He's got nothing but a little pair of boxers on.
Oh man, okay.
Hey, he walks all the way around the house, right? But his truck, he's got a new Silverado. I mean, I don't know what year this was, 17, 18, 19. So, I mean, he's got a new Silverado. But the keys are on the bar in the house that's on fire, right? Now, he's got nothing but boxers. He was barefoot in the snow and ice. He was able to reach in the back door of the house, had you have a back door full of wood or whatever, and he had a pair of coveralls, so he's able to get some coveralls and some rubber boots on. And he got in he's had an old Ford there with a bail spike on it that he left the keys in. So he fires his truck up, drives down to the first neighbor who doesn't answer his call for help. So then he has got to a second neighbor, and then he finally called 911, and the fire department showed up and put the fire out. But when I'm meeting him, I got this training adjuster, and this old man says to me, I remember walking through this barn with him. The adjuster's walking in front, I'm in behind, and this old man's behind him. We walk outside. He goes, "What are you, about 265 or so?" And I said, "Huh?" And he goes, "What are you, 260, 265?" And I said, "No, probably 280. Why?" And he said, "Well, it's hard to tell with your coat on or something." He said, "But I'm a good judge of size." And I said, "Yeah, you're pretty close." I said, "You do that often or something?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I've wrestled. I did this." So he started telling me about it's really a segue into when America was full of tough men, right? He grew up on the Iron Range, northern Minnesota, and they moved with no running water and an outhouse, and his dad got a factory job in town, and I don't remember if it was Bemidji or Brainerd, one of the towns in northern Minnesota. They had a brand new high school, and I think it was 1955 or 58, in the 50s. And he said him and his brother played every sport you could so they could take a shower and stuff at school, because they didn't have a shower.
Jesus. Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
so listen to this, and I'm going to tell you the guy's name offline one day. So I get to talking to him, and one thing led to another, and he's a PhD doctor. This 80-year-old horseman is he was a PhD doctor, and he told me how he got to go to full ride scholarship, played football and wrestled for the University of Minnesota, and his brother did too. His big brother, and his big brother was drafted in like the 62 or 64 draft. His brother was drafted by, I think, Chicago. And he said, yeah, because they played Division I ball in the early '60s, early to mid '60s, and he said he didn't quite make it because he just wasn't quite big enough, wasn't quite fast enough, but he was able to go to college for free, and then he went ahead and started teaching undergrad, and you know how that works. Then you go teach grad school, and you go to grad school for free, and then blah 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 blah. But he had horses. He had these haired horses. You ever seen curly haired horses?
No, I've not seen a curly
So
haired horse.
anyway, they're horses, but they got these curly hair. They look kind of like paint horses from the road. But imagine how a horse would look with his winter coat on. It looks like that year round. And he had them trained. I mean, he had horses that like sit and come and stay just like a dog would, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm talking to him, I kind of fostered this relationship with him. And then one day he said something about butchering a horse, and I said, "Huh?" And he said, "Yeah, I got that one over there is on death row, basically. She's dumb as a post. She ain't gonna work out, so we're just gonna eat her."
Okay.
And I said, "Serious?" And he goes, "Yeah, you need some horse meat?" And I said, I've heard about it my whole life, but I didn't know anybody that ate it." And he said, "I'll tell you what, I got a waiting list for it." And I said, "That's what he says." He says, "I got a waiting list for it." And I said, because he said he grew up eating it, and his kids eat it, and then there's a lot of Native American population there in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and he tells me this. He said, "I got a guy," and he tells me the guy, and I so wish I could tell you this dude's name, this Indian story, but I don't know how I'm going to do it without saying his name, because I know his Indian name, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna supplant his real name with Big Buffalo.
Okay.
So this old man says, "Big Buffalo helps me." And I said, "What?" And he goes, Big Buffalo helps me." And I said, "What kind of name is that?" And he goes, "Well, this guy was born, his name was like Sam Williams." Okay. And what happened is he grew up he grew up looking like a native and acting like a native and being raised as a native. And when he got divorced, the judge said to the ex-wife, "Do you want to change your name?" And she said, "Yeah," back to her maiden name. And he interjected in the divorce hearing and said, "Well, if she can change her name, can I change my name?" And the judge goes, "Yeah, I guess. What name do you want?" And he said, "I want my Native American name, Big Buffalo, Big Buffalo." I think he said Big Buffalo first, and the judge said, "Was that your first name or your last name?" He said, "Let's do both." And then they court recorded it Big Buffalo, Big Buffalo. Okay.
Okay.
So he said he came over here, he knew him, and he wanted to, he was learning how to ride, or he was getting back to his native roots, right?
Okay.
And he was learning how to ride horses, and then he started eating horses, and he just loved it. And every time they butcher a horse, he butchers a couple of them a year, you know. Big Buffalo and all his compadres come and take as much meat as they can get, much horse meat as they can get. So as he's telling me the story, I'm like you. I start laughing about changing your name in court, right, in divorce court, Big Buffalo. And he said, "Well, he kind of fell on hard times with a little bit, but he's such a good-hearted guy. He's learned to roll with the punches." And I said, what? And he goes, well, he did that DNA stuff, and he ain't Indian at all. He's half Mexican and half Italian. They lied. His parents lied. He ain't got no Indian in him at all.
Oh, like big meatball.
I don't know. And I said, well, look at the bright side. He can always do don't litter commercials.
Oh, God.
Right? You know who I'm talking about.
Oh.
Keep America
Yeah.
Beautiful. He wasn't an Indian.
He was Italian, right?
He was Italian, right? He was Italian. So all that segues back to the. So apparently the Plains Indians still eat it a lot. The farmers and ranchers eat a lot. I've been to France 300 times. I don't know if I've ever ate it or not. I used to say, especially when it comes to Asian food, if they can make that cat taste like this, I'll eat it. So if they can make that horse taste like that, I'd eat it. Right? Maybe.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with a guy at the first post office I worked with, and there used to be there was this Chinese restaurant in this little strip mall, and he'd say, hey, you know that there used to be a pet store. And what do you mean? He goes, yeah. He goes, Chinese restaurant came in and bought that bought the pet store to put them in inventory and all. He goes, they just put it on the menu. It's like,
well,
oh,
like I said, we used to eat a lot of coon. Do you ever eat raccoons?
I had
I had a buddy.
I had squirrel. A
I
guy
had a
on my
buddy of
route gave
mine.
me some
Hey,
squirrel.
I had a buddy of mine's dad used to barbecue coon. They'd barbecue it and put in these big roasters, and it'd just sit in there until it would just pull off the bone, right? And coon tastes a lot like bear. It's kind of greasy, but boy, it just or almost like a pork, right? Almost like a pork. But you cook it long enough and put enough barbecue sauce in there, and it tastes like it. And there was a whole bunch of back in the old coon hunting days in the early '80s, late '70s, early '80s. My buddy's big brothers were coon hunters, and I know I've probably told some coon hunting stories on this podcast, but what I know I haven't talked is on the east side of town where I grew up. There's a strong population of, I'm gonna just call them blacks, African Americans, blacks, whatever you want to say. And these guys would skin those coons. And back in the old days, the hide was worth $40, but they had people in places that would buy every skinned coon that they brought to them for $5 a piece. But they just had to keep a foot on it, so the brothers knew that you wasn't selling them a cat.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. So terrible you started getting scratchy on me. Uh-huh. So, but it was good. It's like I said, if they make that coon taste like that, I'll eat it. They call them dumpster pandas
Oh my gosh.
or trash pandas. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh man, I think we've just totally chased off every single one of our listeners.
With what? The coons or the eating horse?
Eating it all. That's all I can say. Nobody's gonna want to eat again today.
Well, what I started out is to show you my third place ribbon for my country ham. Did you see that? Did I show it to you?
No, you won
I
third
helped my
place at the
kid.
fair.
That's what I was started to tell you. I was going to talk about the curing hams and in the county fair, and I ended up going off course. You know. So yeah, I mean, I did 6 or 7 hams this year, 2 of which got ribbons at the fair.
Well, congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Well, hey, if you can, I don't know how they're going to taste, but boy, they turned out good. Hmm.
Well, as long as that's what it really is.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's really what it is. Uh huh. Anyway, well, I think we ought to just stop it there, shouldn't we? And we'll talk next week. And
I can only imagine.
I can
I can
only
only
imagine where we're going, right? I mean, if we didn't kill him after last week's conversation, we did this week, I guess, huh?
Well, let's hope they come back next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.